coverage last night.
Don't worry, we won't get that far.
That was pretty ugly.
Yeah.
I don't care what side you're on. That was pretty ugly last night.
For sure.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity to be with you all today. It's always fun to, it's amazing how fast a year goes by. We try to cover the same topics, and we've got a couple of different docs coming this year to speak to, and so we'll see how they do. And as always, make sure and give us feedback if the topics are no longer relevant, or you want other topics to be discussed, or somebody just does a terrible job, or even if they do a good job, that's good to know too. Then we can give them that feedback as well. So as you remember, we've divided this up into seven different topics, and I'm going to cover leadership today and why that's important in medical school applications. And then, as per requests in the past, I've also included a little bit on why I think medicine is a good career to go into. And so, if you're here last year, it'll sound vaguely familiar, and that's okay, because repetition is a good thing. But otherwise, I hope you don't get too bored if it is too repetitious. And as Colton had mentioned, if any questions or concerns come up, it sounds like you're going to use the chat function, and then we'll get it at the end. Okay. And obviously, if I cut out or you can't hear me or whatever, signal me. I'm going to try to share my screen here. Just 1 second. Okay. Can you see it? Can you give me a thumbs up if you can see it? All right. I got a couple thumbs ups anyway. Okay. So as I mentioned, I'm going to talk a little bit about leadership and why that's important for medical school admissions. And again, it's a really exciting time of your life, because and I also recognize that it's very stressful to think about all these applications and all the hoops you have to jump through to do it. But I'll just reassure you that all those hoops you have to jump through right now are totally worth it, because once you get into this career, and you all totally have the ability and capacity to do so, once you do it, though, it's awesome, and it's just a constant, constantly feeding your brain and exciting new discoveries and good interactions with people. So it's been a great career for me. But as we talk about leadership, I think one of my favorite quotes on leadership was by Margaret Thatcher. Does anybody remember who Margaret Thatcher was? I guess it's a little harder to be interactive here. So I usually ask what will now be rhetorical questions. So think about those questions if I ask them. But anyway, she was the British Prime Minister for the longest time, and she was awesome. She did some really cool things. And one of the things she said was that when somebody asked her what leadership was, she said, being a leader is like being a lady. If you have to go around telling people you are one, you aren't. And I think that applies really well to leadership and the way we think about things in medicine. It should be, in my opinion, leadership is assumed by those around you and those who want to follow. It doesn't take a title, or it doesn't take a specific step or anything like that to become a leader. It's really the assumption is of who's a leader is based on those around you. So great examples of leaders throughout society. This is a kind of a conglomeration of pictures. Obviously George Washington, Gandhi, Sandra Day O'Connor, Mother Teresa, Tom Brady. Got to change that uniform now. He's moved teams, but he's an excellent leader. This picture in the middle of Dwight Eisenhower. I'm reading this biography now on Dwight Eisenhower. And again, political or politics aside, I guess, like, that guy was an awesome leader. He was just incredible how he assembled people that, in his cabinet. One of the things he did was he assembled his cabinet with people who disagreed with him all the time, who shared different visions. He didn't get a bunch of yes men on his cabinet. And in fact, he would tell his cabinet members and his advisors that, hey, your job is not to agree with me. Your job is to present all the different perspectives, and we'll argue about it, and we'll have all kinds of conversation and discussion on all these different issues. At the end of the day, we'll leave the room all on the same page, but I want to hear these different views and different perspectives. And I think that was a really cool demonstration of leadership. And I have like Hitler here. And it's interesting to put Hitler on a list of great leaders or examples of leaders, but great doesn't always mean good and doing the right thing. But I don't think anybody can argue that that guy had a whole group of people, a whole nation following him and doing things that were actually, I think, morally and ethically wrong. And so leaders can lead people to do both good and bad. And so we have to be careful when we talk about leadership and become leaders, that we're actually sticking to certain principles and leading people in the right directions. So I'm sure you all can think of many leaders throughout your life, for examples through history or present day of people who demonstrate good leadership. All these people had very differing leadership styles. Some were very quiet, some were very outspoken, some led by example, some were very formal, some were very informal. But nevertheless, I think the argument can be made that all these people were really excellent examples of what leaders are. So why do medical schools look for leaders? I think that there are a lot of reasons for that. And you think about, I think that this pandemic has been a really good demonstration of how prominent or how much sometimes the world looks at doctors for some leadership and some guidance with regards to some of the things you're dealing with in public health and other pieces in the community. And I think it's been a really good demonstration of that. I think medical schools look for leaders when they're looking for applicants to their medical school, because people do and physicians do really become leaders in the community. Think about all the different stressful environments and conditions that the doctors and medical personnel really work under. A lot of times it's very high stress. A lot of times it involves some sort of trauma or some sort of accident. A lot of times it's a social situation that can become very difficult and stressful. They also, especially nowadays, work with large teams and lots of coworkers, and they can be at various levels. Again, they could be other physicians, they could be administrators, they could be nurses, phlebotomists, social workers. I mean, you name it. There are entire teams dedicated to the care of patients. And if somebody it doesn't work well with a team or is not able to lead a team, they're not going to be very successful nowadays in medicine. I think gone are the days where you were the solo practitioner that just kind of said, do this, and people jumped and did everything exactly how you said. I mean, there's a lot more collaborations, a lot more subspecialized than it used to be. Doctors are often asked to give orders. You think about what happens in an emergency department or during a surgery, or even on a daily basis in a pediatrician's office. Those orders, as we've called them for many years, means that you are often looked at for guidance on what to do next and what position you should take on certain things. And really, physicians really advocate and represent patients. Many times a patient may be unconscious. Many times a patient may not be able to communicate their wants or their desires. Sometimes you're taking care of kids. It becomes a totally different situation to try to understand where they're coming from and to advocate for them. Becoming a leader in not only the medical community, but also the community as a large becomes important, which is the next slide in our home community. So medical care is a really important part of society. In fact, there was a article that was published in one of the retirement journals recently, and it talked about where do people look for retirement, or what do they look for in a community when they are looking to retire. And the number one thing on the list was, what's the medical care like? So if you have good medical care and you have a good medical community, people are going to come there, and it's not going to prevent them from doing so. I mean, the nice weather in the winter helps as well, but I think you're seeing a flocking to St. George based on not only the weather and location, but also the fact that there's really good medical care here. Cities and regions are often defined by medical care. Think about some of the cities that are built up around medical centers. Think about the Mayo Clinic in Rochester, Minnesota. So if you haven't been there, and many of you may have not, but Rochester, Minnesota, it really is in the middle of absolutely nowhere. It's on the plains, and you fly into this airport. It's about it's a little ways away. You start driving through these kind of cornfields and wheat fields, and suddenly you come over this rise, and there's this huge glimmering city, and all it is medical facilities, just the whole Mayo Clinic, and it's just this whole town and community that's grown up around there. You could say the same for places like Johns Hopkins or MD Anderson, or the UCLA Medical Center. There's a lot of examples of places where cities and regions are defined by the medical care and the specific centers that are there. Because of the long and lengthy journey that one takes to become a physician, you're often looked to for advice and counsel on not only career paths but life in general. I think that physicians have a little bit of a different perspective about life because of who they care for and the complexities of healthcare and the people that come to them. So you get to see people who are struggling with cancers, and you get to see people who are doing very well, and offering that perspective so people will come to you with that becomes an important part of it, especially in your home community. So what are schools looking for? I've shared this before, but we have access to, it's kind of a think tank, a group of medical school, let's see, what's the best way to call it? A group of medical school interview committees that are interviewed every couple of years, and they ask specific questions to these interview committees on different aspects of the medical school admission process. So what are schools looking for? This is what the definition, well, actually, this definition came from the University of Utah website, but it's very similar to the statements that were made from many of these interview committees that go through this survey every couple of years. So they say the definition of leadership is a position of responsibility for others with a purpose to guide or direct others, dedication, determination, ability to make decisions, and a willingness to contribute to the welfare of others are indicators of one's abilities to succeed in medicine. Individuals with these characteristics readily accept positions of leadership, are an asset to their community and profession. So when asking them, how important is it that a student has had leadership experience? So most of the admissions committees in this survey said that it's very important. Here were some of their comments. We expect our students will become leaders in one way or another, and just some of those things, similar things we talked about. Leadership demonstrates good interpersonal skills and ability to work well with others, and it shows commitment. Obviously, when you talk about some of the service projects or lab projects, research projects, and stuff that we do to fill out our application for medical schools and that sort of thing, it obviously means a little bit more to an admissions committee if you demonstrated leadership during those activities. And it just shows commitment and the ability to carry out a project and the importance of it. One or two of these admission committees said it's moderately important to have the leadership experience. Service leadership research, any can serve as a major driving activity. I think this admission committee, by saying that quote, what they're highlighting is that some people are better at some things than others. So some people have a lot of really kind of heavy leadership attributes, whereas others might be a little bit more, I don't know, maybe book smart and have higher MCAT scores or GPAs. Others may be really good at sort of the basic science and the research aspects of things. So just to be able to demonstrate what your major drive is and what will make you successful. There was one that said, hey, it's not critical. Some have time for it and some don't. I definitely think that that's the minority based on the survey, but nevertheless, that's one of the comments that was made. So we often ask how much, like, how do you quantify that? So how much leadership experience is expected? How much is impressive? Well, this survey to these admissions committees says it's the quality, not the quantity, that counts. We've heard that many times. Obviously, leadership is something that's hard to quantify. It's easy to calculate research hours or time spent in service, but how do you really quantify leadership? So it's really kind of hard to get at that. What needs to be demonstrated is the depth and level of involvement, which become very important no matter what project you're on, or especially if you claim some leadership responsibility for that. This group commented that we like to see consistent involvement over at least a year's time. We won't really even look at it unless it occurred over a significant amount of time. I mean, you can think of examples of that, of us, joining a club because we need, something to fill out our our application, we sign up to be the secretary, and we're there for 6 months, and the club doesn't fly or whatever, and it doesn't make any sense. And obviously that is not a real clear definition of what leadership is, and people will see through that kind of a thing. This group said it depends on how much impact one had. Think about that as you, again, think about the research or the service projects or some of the volunteer work you do. How much impact and how much are you able to describe that impact to these admissions committees will be really important, and showing the leadership qualities that you had to help that succeed. How recent does the leadership experience need to have been for students to include it on their application? I thought that that's a very interesting question. It's also very interesting to see what some of the comments were. So it's the quality, not the quantity. It's the quality, not quantity that counts. That came up again. This group said, hey, it really should be within college or within the past 2 to 5 years, something a little bit more recent to demonstrate that you really are dedicated now that you've had this decision. You're not drawing on things from the past. Although this group, which I tend to agree with, there's no real time limit. Once a leader, always a leader. It's not a skill one forgets. I think that there's some truth to that. I mean, I think that some people have a natural tendency to be a leader, and some people have to work at it a little bit harder. I think that a lot of times what happens is when you choose a career like medicine, you've typically been a little bit of a harder driver in your class and your work and your kind of extracurricular activities, and so I think that sort of comes out naturally in the application process, and as we apply to medical schools and dental schools and those sorts of things. So here are some examples of research opportunities, and again, this comes from this survey. Obviously, service organization. We talked about that, not only being part of the service organization, but also being a leader and carrying out some of the projects that are there. Performing arts groups, sports teams, fraternities, sororities, organizations of student volunteers, directing a play demonstrates some real leadership quality. Editing a newspaper. We don't actually have newspapers anymore, so I don't know why that came up, but nevertheless, they included that on their list. Being a mentor or tutor. So leadership doesn't have to be about leading a big group. Helping one person improve and become better can really demonstrate good leadership. Combining it with service projects, again, as part of these service organizations, not only be part of the service, but help to lead out and really carry out the project. Camp counselor, teaching your hobbies. That's always great because you're able to combine and sort of kill two birds with one stone when you're able to combine the stuff that you like to do on the outside with these leadership opportunities. ROTC is a big thing, starting a business. I remember a couple of years ago from the DPMA group, we had a student that applied for the Stanford Intermountain research opportunity. And one of the things that really stuck out in his application was he had this small business where he had a cleaning company that he was in charge of, and he had several people to work for him, and he carried out these contracts and made it really work, and that was really impressive to the selection committee because he demonstrated not only the ability to balance different aspects of his life, but also the ability to lead a group and have a successful business. Humanitarian trips, fundraisers, et cetera, et cetera. You can all think of many examples of places where we can demonstrate leadership. I think it's important anytime you're applying for, whether it's for medical school applications or medical school admissions or jobs or fellowships or internships in the future, I think the important thing is you got to be who you are. Sometimes leadership isn't a real strength, and that's okay. You all have different strengths, but we need to play to those strengths. We need to make sure that those strengths are really highlighted. It needs to be natural. It needs to be meaningful. It doesn't mean you can't do things to try to improve your leadership skills, but there are things that are forced and things that come naturally. And those are the things you need to concentrate on. Um, when you talk about your leadership opportunities, it's not necessarily about the title. It's about what you're able to accomplish during that leadership tenure. Again, trying to kill two birds with one stone, trying to combine your leadership with service and research is, I think, really important. There's only so many hours in the day. There's only so much you can do. So combining those pieces are important. And I would just highlight that leadership is just a part of the application process. Again, some are going to uh, shine brighter in this category than others, and that's great. You just got to find out where you shine and make sure that's highlighted throughout that whole process. Okay. I think the leadership principle, I think that comes pretty naturally. It's pretty self-explanatory. There's lots of opportunities throughout all the things that make us well-rounded to offer those leadership skills. Maybe I'll pause there and ask if there are any questions with regards to the leadership aspect before I go to the next part of the presentation.
So far we have one in the chat, and it's how have you dealt with difficult situations as a leader in the past?
So it's a good question. How have I dealt with difficult situations as a leader in the past? It kind of, obviously it depends on the situation. Oftentimes, difficult situations have to do with people and misunderstanding. And as a physician, many of the leadership, or as a student trying to get into medical school and trying to beef up your application, leadership is going to be about people skills. So whenever I've had a hard situation, it's always been because somebody doesn't want to do things a certain way, or they haven't been motivated a certain way. But when you sit down and you talk with that person and try to address what's going on, it's most often that they just have a different perspective, that they just had a little bit of a different understanding of what the project was or what their role and then what their responsibility in that project is. So what I have found over the years, and I'm not professing to be the perfect leader in the world, but what I have found over the years is whenever there's a hard thing and it has to do with a person, trying to sit down and really trying to understand their perspective becomes really important. Um, you saw the total opposite last night in the debates, for instance. Uh, Neither of those guys tried to understand the other point of view, and I get it. It's politics and everything else, and I'm certainly not. I'm not choosing a side, and you're not going to get the side that I'm on, no matter how hard you try. But the point is almost every time I've had a conflict, if I have sat back and tried to understand the perspective of the person who's having trouble, or the reason that we're having trouble, moving a project along, it gives you really incredible insight. The other thing it does is it demonstrates to that person that you really do care about them, and you really are trying to figure things out and try to make things better for them. And while you might not totally agree on something, just the aspect of being able to say, oh, I totally understand where you're coming from. Doesn't mean I agree, but I understand where you're coming from. It makes that situation a lot less contentious, and people a lot more willing to bend, and start kind of rowing in the right direction.
Awesome, thank you. So another one from Hannah, how do you recommend gaining confidence in being a leader, and how have you transferred those lessons to your current career?
Yeah, so that's a great question. I think it's just like anything else, Hannah. It is, it's kind of a trial and error thing. Like you have to be willing to have the courage to do it, first of all, and be willing to admit that you make mistakes sometimes. The best leaders I have found are the ones who are humble, and the ones who are able to say, I might have messed that up. That might not have been the right decision. Be able to own that and just apologize to the group that you're leading and just say, hey, I think I might have led us down the wrong path here. Now in retrospect, I can see we should have done this. That gains tremendous respect for people. And it also starts to give you more confidence that you as a leader, you don't have to have the right answer all the time. You have to be willing to have some courage and be able to stand up for what you think is the right thing. but oftentimes that's the wrong answer. And you can't ever determine that until you start out on a path and start going. When you're faced with a fork in the road and you don't know what either end leads to, sometimes you just got to be willing to take that little bit of a risk and that little bit of a challenge and start going down that road. And you may find that not very far down that it's totally the wrong path, and you're going to have to retreat and then and choose the other fork. Um, but being able to admit that you were wrong and being able to try and do things is going to gain you tremendous respect and then tremendous confidence over the years.
Awesome. It doesn't look like there are any other questions so far.
Okay.
So if you wanted to keep going, I'm sure
Okay.
we'll have a lot more at the end.
Okay. So let me kind of pivot a little bit and talk about why I think medicine is a great career to go into. I would sort of summarize it with these 4 S's. Okay. And we'll talk about each of those. And again, this may be a review to some of you, but I think it's really important to highlight. I hands down think that this is the best career that anybody can consider. And I'm totally biased, but I have been nothing but happy with this career path I've chosen. And if I were to do it all again, if I were to have to do it all again, I totally would. It would be worth it if I had to do twice the amount of training. It's just a really, really cool job, and it makes me get up every morning inspired to go. It doesn't mean I don't get tired sometimes. I don't get sick of it sometimes, just like you do with anything else. But it's been incredible, and I really think it boils down to these 4 things: science, stability, selection, and social impact. So when you think about the science in medicine, it is absolutely incredible what is going on right now. I mean, you think about it for just a second, and I hate talking about the coronavirus because I'm so sick of it, but there are some really good demonstrations that come out of that. The fact that that a virus was identified in, like, I think it was like the fall, like late fall, like November, December of 2019, and a year later we'll likely have a vaccine for that virus that has been so deadly, is absolutely incredible. The fact that we can learn on a month to month or week to week or even day to day basis on how to treat this disease. I mean, there's a reason the mortality rate, and again, there are no politics here. There's part of the reason the mortality rates for coronavirus are coming down from our hospitalized patients is because in that short amount of time, we've gotten better at treating it. You've seen this whole global community come together and be able to learn from each other in a very, very quick fashion. You've seen people collaborate across all kinds of organizations and countries and continents to try to find out the best way to do these things. And so we learned a lot from the people in China. We learned a lot from the people in Italy. We learned a lot from the people in New York, and and have really progressed along the way, so that today it's still a big deal, but it's not nearly as dreadful and fearful if you get hospitalized as it was before. That, I think, is just a really amazing thing that happened. And then when you talk about my specialty, like and I treat cancer, the types of treatments that are coming out nowadays for cancer and what we're able to do with it are, they're absolutely, it's insane to even think about. I think about when I started about 15 years ago, I can't even imagine treating cancer in that same way. The ability to train your own body's immune system to fight the cancer, and seeing some of the home runs that are being hit with some of these immunotherapies or targeted therapies, trying to turn cancer into a chronic disease, whereas before it had a life expectancy of months, is absolutely incredible. Now, it's a lot of work to stay on top of it. Every day there's a new drug that's invented, or a new device or something like that comes out in medicine. It's just absolutely incredible, the science that's happening there. I loved this statistic and I share it all the time, but it's estimated that 50% of everything you learn in medical school becomes obsolete in 7 years. And I bet it's faster than that now. That's kind of an old statistic. So after I'd been out of medical school 7 years, which was seems like forever ago, 50% of what I learned was totally obsolete. There's nothing like that in the world. Like that is, it's just crazy. So your mind is constantly churning, constantly trying to find new and better ways to do things. And there's all different aspects of medicine. Not only is like they're the basic science and new drugs and new techniques and surgeries and that sort of thing, but healthcare delivery models, like how's the best way to take care of patients in their home and keep them out of the hospital and ERs and how can we leverage some of these telehealth types of devices and remote patient monitoring and all these things are just incredible. The things that we're doing now are things that people didn't dream of even 20 years ago. And I can't wait to see what the next 5, 10, 20 years. I mean, we'll be able to diagnose cancer with just blood draws. I'm almost certain of that. We will tell it exactly where it is. We'll be able to design exactly the right treatment for it. It's just, I mean, it's pretty incredible. So I'm really excited about that. So the science in and of itself really can drive you and really makes this job not boring and really exciting on a day-to-day basis. I always share this experience when I talk about stability. My dad was in construction, still is in construction. And I remember growing up, particularly in high school, every Saturday and every day we had off of school, whether it was a holiday or not, I went to work with my dad. And we built houses and we built buildings and I was part of framing crews and finish crews and concrete and all that kind of stuff. And he used to tell me that he said, you got to understand this one word, stability. And as a 16-year-old, I was like, oh, okay, I don't know what that is. I'm just all about excitement and I want to bungee jump or something. Do people still bungee jump? I don't even know if that's a thing anymore. Oh, they do. Okay, good. I just thought you swiped up and swiped down and left and right now, but people actually do some things outside. Okay. But he said, one day when you have mouths to feed and a shelter to provide, you'll understand what stability, how important stability is. And as I thought about that through my life, that is so true. Having a stable job and a stable career really takes a lot of stress and anxiety away from someone. And medicine is not going away. There's always going to be sick people, always going to be people that need our help to feel better and live healthy lives. And even during the Great Recession in 2008, when people were losing jobs left and right and the economy was pretty lousy, the healthcare industry was the only one that continued to grow. And I think that's evidence in and of itself that it's not going away, and you're always going to have the opportunity to work, and there's always going to be a job there. This is from the U.S. News and World Report when they ranked America's best careers. The growth trend in healthcare is almost unstoppable. Millions and millions of aging baby boomers will continue to place a heightened demand on the healthcare providers, as well as provide plenty of opportunity for medical innovation. I mentioned this, but healthcare managed to expand their payrolls during that recession in 2008, and jobs were seen in all the sectors, in rural, suburban, urban centers. And I personally don't know any out of work doctors. If there's a doctor that's not working, that's their own choice, because there are jobs everywhere. Nurses, medical technicians, the same way. I mean, there are opportunities galore out there, and you can almost pick and choose where you want to live depending on the specialty you go into. So supply and demand, just as I mentioned, there's always going to be sick people needing medical care. Therefore, there's always going to be a need for someone to provide that care. I think the third S of selection is really important. All these kind of questions come into play when you're trying to choose your career. What do I want to be? How much do I want to work? What kind of people do I want to work with? How much training am I willing to undergo? Where do I want to work? What setting do I want to work in? Do I want to be involved with people? Do I want to work with my hands? All these types of questions happen when we're trying to figure out what we want to do in our life. And that's the beauty about medicine, is there are so many different pathways that you can take, just depending on what you want. So if I'm these are a lot of different careers in healthcare. But if I'm a person who wants to know a little bit about everything, and I want to follow patients through kind of a life cycle, and take care of big families, and you know and just really get to know people really well, then I become a primary care physician, where I see people on a routine basis, on a regular basis. I know a little bit about everything. If somebody comes into me with the kind of the routine regular stuff that physicians deal with, I'm going to be able to handle that really well. I'm going to be able to give them advice. I'm going to be able to watch them learn and grow. And there are a lot of specialties, or sorry, there are a lot of different types of primary care physicians. They typically have like kind of sort of regular 9 to 5 hours in clinic, and work in kind of a sort of a regular routine, uh, controlled, I guess is a better way to put it, controlled environment. And all those specialties line up really well with there. If I want to know a lot about something and one particular topic, there are lots of different subspecialties that you can go into. Obviously, the most important one is oncology, but there are other ones as well that are out there. So if you have an interest in the heart and how amazing that pump is, and the electrophysiology behind heart attacks and arrhythmias and that sort of a thing, you can become a cardiovascular cardiologist. If you want to know all about the heart and work with your hands, and you become a cardiothoracic surgeon. There's all different kinds of pathways in medicine that make it possible to design your life. Maybe you don't even like to work with people. The science and the stability interests you, but you don't like to work with people. Radiologists and pathologists, they look at films all day, like at X-rays and MRIs and CT scans, and the stuff they do is really cool. But they don't have to interact with people that much. Pathologists looking at cancer slides and that sort of thing become really cool. Some of these surgical subspecialists have really cool tools that they use to do surgeries and put cameras where they shouldn't go, and have a lot of like gadgets and techie devices that they use. So what you want to be and do determines the education, training, and pathway you need to take, and you really have to love your job. I can't think of anything worse than having to get up every morning just hating my job. I mean, that would be the biggest grind and the biggest slog of life that I can imagine. Being able to get up every morning and saying, hey, I'm excited to go to my job and see what I see today and see what I learned today. That's what it's all about. Societal impact. So what does it mean to make a difference? What does it mean to impact a life? And really, I know this goes without saying, but there's a lot more to life than just bringing home a paycheck. I'll say, and I know people know this, not only is it a stable job, but it's a secure job as far as income is concerned. So people can make a good living in medicine for sure, but it's much more than that. It really is about making an impact on people, both on an individual basis and on a community as a whole. Treating, I feel like I have the perfect job because I have clinic a couple of days a week where I see patients and have really cool interactions on an individual basis. And then in some of my leadership responsibilities, get to help develop a cancer program for our entire system, which is a lot of fun because I interact with all kinds of other different people and get to hopefully influence the way that cancer is treated throughout the whole state. And so there's all kinds of different spins you can take on medicine as a career. And at the end of the day, you go home happy that you made an impact and a difference in somebody's life. And that's just really what a career is all about. So those are the 4 S's. Okay. The science, the stability, the selection, and the societal impact. And that's why I think medicine is a great career. That's why I love that all of you are here today and have sort of chosen this path, or at least have started down on this path. And again, I know it can be overwhelming to think about all the things you have to do and all the hoops you have to jump through, but I'm promising you that it's totally worth it.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And you ended up getting one more question about leadership.
Sure.
So you kind of talked about coupling leadership with research or kind of volunteering. One
Hmm.
person asked if you're able to do that with patient exposure. So she has a lot of hours as a lead EMT in the ER, and she wants to know if that can be counted towards both leadership and patient exposure.
Yeah. If you can tell me like what things do you do as a lead? Did you say lead EMT?
Yeah, Jessica, you can go ahead and unmute yourself if you wanted to just tell them directly. One sec. I think
I
she's
just had to
actually.
get somewhere where I could. Um, so basically, as lead EMT, then we we pretty much manage everybody in the emergency department. We are, just right, pretty much on an equal level with the charge nurse.
Oh yeah.
So we manage everybody's schedules. We
Oh yeah.
just make sure that everything is going smoothly. We run all rapid responses anywhere in the hospital. Um, and then like if anybody needs anything from even from another floor or anything, because we do all of the ultrasound IVs for the entire hospital as well.
Yeah.
And so yeah, basically if anybody needs anything anywhere in the hospital, then yeah, it kind of falls on us to figure it out for them.
Yeah. So that would be a really, yeah. So I think that's perfect because, you're getting those hours, those patient contact hours, in the medical field. But to be able to say, look, as a lead EMT, I was part of a team that helped do X, Y, and Z. This was some of our responsibilities, really describe it. And particularly if there was a piece to that that you really helped to implement to make better. So as lead EMT, as a lead EMT, we recognized this as a problem. And to overcome that, I helped to do, whatever task or whatever project to make that better. And what we saw at the end was this outcome that was that was desired. And
Okay.
even if the outcome is not what you desired, right? If it turned out it didn't work, the fact that you could demonstrate that, hey, you recognized a problem and B, had a plan to carry it out, and then we're able to, and then C, we're able, three C, whatever, we're able to analyze the results and realize that, hey, that didn't really work, and so we didn't push it any further. I think that all demonstrates leadership capacity, and I think that an admissions committee would really like that sort of leadership experience.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, I think that's great. I think you can do a lot with that for sure.
All right. And then a couple people just asked kind of when and how did you know that you wanted to go into oncology? And was there another field that you thought you might have wanted to go into while in medical school?
Yeah. So great question. I actually, have you guys ever seen ER? I'm almost embarrassed to say this, but ER was kind of big when I was like just getting into my senior year of high school. That was a TV show that was, one of these totally fake shows. But anyway, but it was awesome. And so I thought, oh, that'd be really cool to be a cardiothoracic surgeon and be able to fly all over the place and just do these life-saving cardiac procedures. So I kind of had it in the back of my mind that I wanted to do it. And I started off in undergrad, and I was actually going to be be a biomedical engineer. So I knew I wanted to be something kind of in medicine. And then I hit this class called thermodynamics, and it was awful. And I also started realizing that these engineers, they didn't really work with people a lot. It was a lot of they had teams, and they interacted a little bit, but they didn't quite have the impact or the people centeredness that I thought I needed. And so I said, oh, I think I need to be a doctor. And at first, I actually thought about being a pediatrician. You always think it's kind of fun to take care of kids, and they're cute and everything. And but then as I was going through medical school, I started to realize, well, then you have to deal with their parents, and half the time they don't talk. They're just like, or they're screaming at you because you're looking in their ear and stuff. It's like, oh, that kind of sounds like being a veterinarian, and I didn't want to. So I didn't want to pursue that path. And then I actually did some rotations with a gastroenterologist And I thought, oh, that'd be cool. Like, these scopes are awesome. These colonoscopies and EGDs, it's really kind of fun to see and kind of fun to do. I kind of like work with my hands because I, done all this construction, and I thought that'd be cool. And so I kind of started going down that road. And then I did a rotation up at the Huntsman Cancer Hospital, and I was like, whoa, there it was. So I started interacting with these cancer patients. They were totally grateful, and they were totally willing to do whatever treatment they needed to do to try to get rid of this cancer. The science there again was, it started, that's where really things started to take off with regards to different treatments and targeted therapies and that sort of a thing. So that really intrigued me. And then coincidentally, around that same time, and this is all during medical school, during my third year medical school, third to fourth year, when you kind of have to decide, my mom got diagnosed with colon cancer as well. So I was able to experience sort of the kind of the patient support side of somebody that was close to me with cancer. And I just realized how impactful her oncologist was to her and her life, and getting her through that really tough time. And so that's what really kind of sold me on it and pushed me over the edge and made me want to do that. But I think it does highlight the fact that there are a lot of different pathways and avenues that you can go down in medicine. And I'm kind of a person that likes to try different things, and so I would be really open-minded when you start down this path. When you think you might want to do a certain thing, you may end up, after experiencing other or being exposed to other specialties, or that you end up in something entirely different, which is still awesome. It's great.
All right. And then another student said, I imagine that as an oncologist, you have to be the bearer of bad news at times. How have you managed to maintain empathy after repeated emotionally taxing experiences?
Yeah, that is kind of hard. That is definitely the hard part of my job. And you have to walk a fine line, because if you're not careful, you can become really calloused, and those interactions just become sort of mundane and routine, and you don't want that, because for that person, that interaction is like the major focus of their life at that point. And so it is difficult. I think that one of the things you have to have as an oncologist, or a physician in general, because those are stressful times, is you have to have a pretty solid support system yourself, whether it's your family or solid friends, or just people that you can rely on. You have to have a little bit of an outlet, right? You can't I think we make fun of sort of the old cliche is that a doctor's out on the golf course, or they're just kind of messing around. But I think that's important to maintain that healthy work-life balance when you get into medicine, because it can be overwhelming. It can be a burdensome and tiresome job when you're constantly giving that bad news. With regards to me personally and cancer, those are definitely hard conversations you have with people, and they're very emotional. You try to be as empathetic as you can. I think it's been nice that I've had some, not nice, but it's been helpful that I've had members of my family who've had cancer too, because I have a little bit of a different perspective on what they might be going through. At the same time, you can help a patient shift their focus. So when it comes a time where the treatments aren't working and their cancer is going to take their life, and they're going to succumb to their disease, you can still help them quite a bit. Dying comfortably, doing things that make it so they're not suffering with that disease, giving them hope that they can be out of pain and be around family members and people. The one interesting thing about cancer that I think is different than a lot of specialties is, even though cancer will sometimes cut your life short, in a really kind of funny way, it actually gives people time. So it's not like a car wreck where, 1 second you're fine, the next second you're gone. Oftentimes when people are diagnosed with cancer, and it's a terminal cancer, they're given time to mend fences and make amends with people, or to enrich certain relationships and get their affairs in order and those kinds of things. And that piece actually can be rewarding as a doc, to help somebody through that transition in their life.
Good question, Johnny. So another question is, with science constantly changing, how do you keep up with current research, medicine, pharmaceuticals, while providing the most up-to-date treatment options for your patients without getting overwhelmed?
Yeah, so that's hard. That's hard sometimes to keep up on all that. I'll tell you that. Most, well, not most, but a lot of doctors are becoming more and more subspecialized, because it is such a mountain of data and information and education to be out there, which is really great. But it is hard to stay on top of it. I would say that most of us will subscribe to certain feeds. So they're like oncology specific feeds. So when a new study is published that, can change practice, we'll get that, and that'll come across on a feed, whether it's a Twitter feed or an email subscription, that sort of thing. That helps a lot. I think that I probably use that quite a bit. So when other people are on Facebook, I'm probably on some nerdy cancer blog, or not blog, but I don't know what I don't even know what you would call them. You guys know what I'm talking about. A news feed that talks about, that summarizes the articles in cancer and the new drugs and stuff that are out there. I think the other thing that we do is, there are certain organizations that help identify what the standards of care are. So there's the National Comprehensive Cancer Network is a big group of organization where they get subspecialists like in breast cancer or colon cancer, and help get together and take all the literature and decide, hey, if somebody has a stage 3 colon cancer, this should be the standard of care. They should get this surgery and this sort of chemotherapy or whatever treatment it is. And so we're constantly, those are constantly being updated. And so there's always algorithms and stuff to follow and help us out. Not everybody fits in those. That's the art of medicine, that not everybody fits perfectly in all those algorithms, but they at least give you some reference points to help you stay on top of things, because it is a challenge, but it's fun too.
Is there anything that you wish you knew before pursuing the profession of an oncologist?
Of an oncologist in particular?
It says your profession, so I mean, I guess you can answer it kind of towards medicine and towards oncology.
Okay. So if there's one thing I wished I knew, I think I've been pleasantly surprised at how much teamwork there is in medicine. I think that surprised me. I thought it was going to be a very top-down profession, meaning everybody just did what the doctor said, and I think that's kind of how it used to be. But it's definitely not that way now. It's a very team-based approach, and so if you have problems taking feedback from team members, or somebody that may not have as much training or education or a sort of a lesser title, if I could explain it that way, then you're going to have a hard time in that career. Again, I feel like I've adjusted really well to it. I think that style fits my personality a little bit better anyway. But I think I was surprised at that. I wasn't surprised in the amount of work it took. I wasn't surprised in the amount of time I would have to study. If anything, so I have been surprised at the great friends I made during the sort of the education process. You kind of become really tight with people. That's part of the reason you're, I've been lifelong friends with the Larsons, because we were in medical school together, and we all chose different paths, but we've maintained good contact and good friendships along the way. In oncology, I think that what has been a little bit of a challenge is because what I didn't know I was getting into. Because the oncology world happens and changes so quickly, often these new drugs and these treatments are ahead of what insurance companies will pay for. And so I've been surprised at how often we have to arm wrestle and jump through hoops with, insurance companies and regulators to try to get these things covered. We always do it, and they always end up making the right decision. It's just really time consuming, and I think that part has been kind of surprising to me. The kind of the red tape and the bureaucracy of medicine. Again, I think you get that in any industry. I didn't expect it as much in medicine. I don't know what I was thinking, because it's obviously a highly regulated industry. But I think that's been a little bit of a surprise to me. Not that I would change anything or do anything different. It's just, it takes a little bit more of your day than I would have anticipated.
And is that common again, like amongst most doctors, having to deal with insurance on a pretty routine basis, I guess? Or is that more of just the executive branch of certain hospitals?
I think most people have to do it. I think that there are certain specialties that probably don't get hit by it as much. Like some of the subspecialists who are, again, doing some of the newer procedures, or you're using some of the newer medicines, they're the ones that are going to be a little bit ahead of what payers will authorize and that sort of a thing. Generally in the primary care specialties, there's not quite as much of that.
All right. And then, so this question was actually asked earlier, but I decided to save it for now. Do you have any words of encouragement for us undergrads, since this semester has been pretty rough and the path forward is not too clear?
Yeah. Here would be my word of wisdom. Don't. Let me think of the best way to put this. Don't lose sight of the goal and the end game here. Okay. So I know it's easier when I'm 44 to have a different perspective on life, because so this year that's been rough has been 1/44th of my life, and it's been 1/20th of yours. And oftentimes when we're at the start, that journey and that path seems so long. And especially when there's been sort of this cloudiness and these delays and obstacles that have occurred because of the pandemic and the riots and everything else that's gone on, I can totally appreciate how overwhelming that seems, and that you'll never get there, and why even start on that path. But I'm telling you, the journey itself is awesome. And then once you get there and get into that career and get moving, it is well worth any sort of decade or more that you had to get there. So my word of encouragement would be just to stick to it. Like we're gonna get through this. And I know it's probably delayed, some of the timelines that people had. But when you take a look at it from a lifetime perspective, it's just a little blip on the radar. Again, I totally get the fact when you're right in the middle of it, it just seems like the whole world's falling around you. But take a step back a little bit and have some perspective. Like, it's a blip on the radar of what a lifetime journey will be.
Awesome. Thank you very much. And it looks like that's all of the questions. So,
okay.
Unless anybody else wants to chime in real quick, I think you're good to go.
All right. Well, it's good to see all of you. Good luck. Have a great time.
Yes, it's always an honor to have you here. Well, not necessarily here, but
I knew
yeah.
I look forward to the time when we'll be in person again. How's that?
Yeah, that'll be nice.
Okay.
Hopefully I'm able to come watch that one as well.
Yeah. All right. We'll see you guys.
All right. Thank you.
Take care.